He's 9 years old. His pack has a new alpha now. He watches the hunts from a distance. But tonight, 1,000 elk are moving through the valley. And the old wolf is not watching anymore. There are mornings in Yellowstone when the light comes in at a low angle across the Lamar Valley and makes everything look like it was painted rather than grown. The snow on the ground catches it first, that particular blue-white of a cold Wyoming dawn, the shadows long and purple and precise, then the ridgelines, then the spruce on the south-facing slopes, then the frozen surface of the river running dark through all that pale. It is the kind of morning that makes even researchers who have been coming here for 15 years stop what they are doing and look. On a ridge above the valley's eastern edge, a wolf is looking too. He is big, or he was big, in the way that old athletes are still recognizably what they were even when the edges have softened. His coat is the gray-black of a winter storm front, lighter at the muzzle now, the fur there gone to the color of ash in the way wolf fur goes when enough seasons have passed. His frame still carries the architecture of a dominant male in his prime, broad shoulders, deep chest, the particular density of a body that was built for sustained effort over decades of hard country. But the way he holds that frame has changed. There is a stiffness in his right hip that was not there 3 years ago. His trot, once the effortless ground-eating lope that his pack could follow for 40 miles, now carries a slight compensation on that side. A hitch so small that a casual observer would miss it, and only someone who had watched him for years would register. His name in the Yellowstone Wolf Project's records is 1147 Mem. His pack calls him nothing, because wolves do not name each other. The researchers who have been following him since he was a 2-year-old pup, running the eastern flank of a hunt in the Hayden Valley, call him Duke. It started as a joke. A young researcher on her first field season, watching him hold position against a bull elk that outweighed him by 600 pounds, said he had the stubborn dignity of a man who knew exactly what he was worth and wasn't interested in discussing it. The name stuck. It always does when a name fits. Duke is 9 years old. In Yellowstone wolf terms, 9 years old is ancient. The average lifespan for a wolf in this ecosystem, factoring in territorial battles, harsh winters, injury, and the occasional vehicle collision on the park roads, is 4 to 5 years. Wolves that reach 7 are rare. Wolves that reach 9 are, in the language of the field notes, exceptional. Duke has been exceptional his whole life. That is not sentiment. It is documented.
If you've ever watched something you love move on without you, you already understand this wolf. Subscribe and hit the bell plug. Duke's story is one you're going to want to finish.
The Druid Peak Pack has been one of the most studied wolf families in North America for the better part of 2 decades. They were reintroduced to Yellowstone in the mid-90s as part of the landmark Wolf Recovery Program, and they have produced more data, more behavioral insight, and more dramatic field observations than almost any wild wolf population on the continent. Duke became the pack's alpha male 8 years ago, at age 1.5. Young for the role, young enough that the researchers initially flagged the transition as potentially unstable. An alpha that age, they noted, typically lacked the experience to manage the pack's complex social dynamics, navigate territorial pressures from neighboring families, and maintain the hunting coordination that kept everyone fed through an Yellowstone winter. Duke proved them wrong inside of 6 months. What he had instead of experience was something harder to quantify and in the long run more durable. He had judgment, not instinct. Every wolf has instinct. Judgment is something else. The ability to read a situation that hasn't happened before and make a decision that accounts for variables that pure instinct doesn't cover. The researchers documented it first in Duke's 3rd winter, when a severe elk shortage pushed the Druid Peak Pack into the territory of the Molly's Pack, a larger, more aggressive family that had previously driven the Druids out of the central Yellowstone Plateau. Duke didn't fight them. He didn't retreat either. He moved his pack along the territorial margin in a pattern that kept them just close enough to contest the boundary without triggering a full confrontation, using the Molly's Pack's own patrol routes to anticipate their positions and consistently staying 1 move ahead. It worked. The Druids fed that winter. The Mollies never engaged. Over the following years, the field notes accumulated with the steady, data-driven patience of long-term research. And what they documented was an alpha who seemed to understand the difference between winning a fight and winning a situation. Duke's pack had fewer territorial conflicts than any comparable Yellowstone family in the research record. They had better hunting success than their pack size would predict. Their pup survival rate was exceptional. Their internal social dynamics, the complex, constant management of personalities and hierarchies and needs that pack leadership required, were, by the objective measures the researchers could apply, remarkably stable. 8 years, 5 litters, 43 pups who survived their first winter. This was Duke's record. But records are what you made. The present is what you are. The present was this. 12 months ago, a 4-year-old male the research team called Rook had challenged Duke for the alpha position. It was not a dramatic confrontation. The most consequential pack transitions rarely were. It was an accumulation of small pressure over 3 months, a gradual shift in the pack's behavioral geometry, a series of moments in which Rook moved into positions that had always been Duke's, and Duke, for the first time in 8 years, did not move him back. The hip had something to do with it. Not everything. Duke's decline as alpha was more complex than one injury, involving the natural arc of aging and the natural ambition of a young male coming into his prime. But the hip was real, and the pack read it the way packs read everything about their members, completely without sentiment, without the loyalty that humans extend to aging leaders as a matter of social courtesy. Wolves did not do social courtesy. They did what worked. Rook worked. Duke didn't. Not anymore. Not fully. The transition completed itself in late October. No blood. Duke's status in history meant that even Rook's challenge was conducted with a degree of deference that a lesser wolf wouldn't have received. But the result was clear in every spatial, behavioral, and social metric the researchers tracked. Rook was alpha. Duke was something the field notes struggled to categorize. A former alpha, still present in the pack, still moving with them, still included in kills and resting formations, but no longer leading, no longer first. This was the thing about wolf packs that was easy to miss if you watched them only in the dramatic moments of hunts and confrontations. They were not purely hierarchical in the human sense, not a chain of command where the lower rungs were invisible. A former alpha who had provided well and led without cruelty occupied a position in the pack's social fabric that was hard to name, but real. Duke was not peripheral. He was not excluded. He ate. He rested with the others. He was in the pack's daily life, present. But on hunt mornings, Rook read the valley and called the line and led the run. And Duke stood on the ridge and watched. He had been watching for 3 months. This morning, something in the valley was making it very hard to keep watching. The elk migration through the Lamar Valley in late November was not a secret to anyone who had spent time in Yellowstone. Every year, as the high country above 8,000 feet became genuinely impassable, not just difficult, but the kind of deep wind-packed snow that even elk with their long legs and enormous hooves could not move through efficiently. The herds that had summered in the alpine meadows moved down. They came through the valleys in waves, hundreds of animals at a time, the movement driven by the simple arithmetic of survival. You go where the food is, or you don't survive the winter. The Lamar Valley was where the food was. Exposed by wind, grazed to a manageable depth by the valley's own resident elk population, warmed by the geothermal activity that ran under portions of the valley floor and kept certain areas clear even in the deepest cold, the Lamar offered winter forage that the high country simply couldn't match. Every wolf pack that held territory in or near it knew this. The valley was contested ground in November for exactly this reason. This year, the migration was larger than usual. A wet autumn had produced deep early snow at elevation, pushing the herds down earlier and faster than normal. By the 3rd week of November, the valley held something the researchers hadn't documented in 7 years: a convergence migration, multiple herds moving through simultaneously. The animals pooling in the valley's lower reaches in a concentration that the senior researcher on the morning watch described in her field notes as, and these were her exact words, genuinely extraordinary. From Duke's Ridge at 6:45 in the morning, it looked like the valley was moving. There were elk as far as he could see, and in 9 years of working this country, he had never seen anything like it. His nose confirmed what his eyes were reading. The air coming up from the valley was thick with elk scent, not the thin, residual traces of animals that had passed through hours ago, but the dense, living smell of hundreds of animals present and moving. His body responded to it before his mind had fully processed it. The slight forward lean, the ears pricked forward, the muscles along his back and haunches coming up to a quiet readiness that was older than thought. Below him, the Druid Peak pack was already moving. Rook had read the valley from the pack's overnight resting site and made his decision fast. This was one of the things Duke would have acknowledged about his successor, if wolves acknowledged things in that way. Rook was quick. He lacked the layered, scenario-anticipating depth of Duke's best decisions, but he had a predator's speed of response to opportunity, and a migration of this size was an opportunity that required speed above everything else. The pack was in hunt formation and moving southeast along the valley floor. Duke watched them go. He watched the formation, the way Rook anchored the left flank, the way the senior female Cassidy held the right, the way the younger adults fanned ahead to move the herd and create separation between the strong animals and the vulnerable. He watched, and he read it the way a coach reads a team he no longer coaches, with the particular compound feeling of pride and distance that comes from caring deeply about something you can no longer directly influence. The pack looked good. They looked coordinated and ready and capable. They would run a segment of this herd for an hour, maybe 2. They would look for the animal that showed weakness, the cow with the early-stage joint issue, the bull whose weight loss suggested an internal problem, the yearling that separated slightly too wide from the main group and ran at the wrong angle when the pressure came. They would make a kill and they would eat, and the valley would provide for them the way it had provided for wolf packs in this ecosystem since the reintroduction. Duke knew all of this. He had done all of this. He had done it better, in his prime, than almost any wolf in this pack's history. He stood on the ridge for 2 minutes watching them move away. Then he came down off the ridge, not fast. His hip didn't do fast on descents anymore, the joint protesting the angle with a dull, persistent ache that he had learned to manage by picking his line carefully, choosing the gentler grades, conserving the range of motion he still had. He came down at his own pace, which was slower than it used to be and still faster than anyone watching would have expected from an animal showing his years. He reached the valley floor and stood in the snow. The pack was a quarter mile ahead. He could see them, could see the distant shapes of the elk herd beyond them, could see the hunt beginning to take shape as Rook drove the left flank of the herd and Cassidy countered on the right. Duke stood in the snow of the Lamar Valley and made a decision that was not complicated. He ran. He ran toward the hunt at a pace he hadn't used in 8 months, and for the first 100 yards, before the hip reminded him of its terms, it felt like every other morning of his life. The pack noticed him when he was 200 yards back. Cassidy saw him first. She was running the right flank, and her angle of travel gave her a sight line back along the valley in the direction Duke was coming from. She clocked him in one glance and made the rapid assessment of an experienced adult wolf, processing unexpected information mid-hunt. Former alpha, moving toward the hunt at speed, not in a threat posture, not in... You didn't break a hunt formation for anything short of a genuine emergency. Rook saw him 30 seconds later. What passed across Rook's face, if you could call it that in an animal whose emotional expression was largely encoded in posture and movement rather than facial muscle, was something the researchers watching from the valley's edge would debate in the evening's debrief. The senior researcher called it assessment. The field coordinator, the graduate student on her second season, who had grown up watching Duke lead this pack on YouTube videos that had 3 million views, called it something she kept to herself. Rook ran another 50 yards without changing his approach. Then he shifted his line slightly east. It was a small adjustment. It opened a lane on the western flank that had not been there before. And whether this was deliberate, whether Rook made a conscious decision to open that lane for his predecessor, was the kind of question that behavioral research could not definitively answer. What the cameras recorded was the spatial fact. Rook moved east. The western flank opened, and Duke, still running toward the hunt from behind, moved into that opening with the directness of an ant. He reached the western flank at a full run and fell into the hunt. His body remembered. That was the thing about muscle memory in a predator that had done something thousands of times. It did not wait for the mind to catch up. Duke's legs found the familiar. His nose, working the air ahead, identified the segments of the elk herd's movement and fed that information to a decision-making system that had been running this exact calculation for 8 years. His ears tracked the sounds of the herd's movement, the particular percussion of hundreds of hooves on snow-covered ground, and translated that sound into positional information. He was slower than he used to be. The hip limited his top speed, and it limited his ability to change direction at full pace. The kind of sharp, lateral cut that separated a fast wolf from a great one. He knew this. He had been watching himself lose it for 2 years, and he was not operating under any illusions about what age had taken. But he was reading the herd. And 9 years of reading elk herds in the Lamar Valley, he saw the animal 40 seconds before anyone else in the pack did. It was a cow in the middle right section of the herd, maybe 8 years old, her muzzle going gray in the way Duke's own muzzle had gone. She was running with the herd, but she was running the wrong way, compensating for something with each left side stride in a pattern so subtle that it was invisible unless you were looking for it and knew what you were looking at. Duke had pulled. He knew what he was looking at. He shifted his line to angle toward her, and because he was on the western flank and the herd's movement was carrying her toward him rather than away, he didn't need speed. He needed position. He had position. The pack read him and adjusted. That was the thing about hunting with an experienced wolf. The pack adjusted even when they didn't know why. Cassidy saw 2 of the younger adults on the far flank swung wide in the instinctive, pack-learned response to a flank wolf changing angle. Rook, reading the herd's movement from the left, held his position and drove hard, pushing the cow's segment of the herd toward Duke's angle of approach. The cow tried to move right. Duke was there. He didn't hit her at full speed. He came in at an angle that cut off her escape to the right and drove her back toward the left, toward the heavier snow at the valley's edge, toward the place where her compromised left leg would cost her the most. The cow was strong and she fought the pressure, trying to find the gap that wasn't there, running the geometry of predator and prey with the desperation of an animal that understood what was happening and could not change it. Rook came in from the front, Cassidy from the right, and 2 of the younger adults hit the rear pursuit at speed, taking up the distance work that Duke's hip wouldn't let him do. The cow was cut from the herd completely now, running alone toward the valley's eastern edge, and what followed was the methodical, exhausting, irreversible process that every successful Yellowstone wolf hunt ended with. It took 22 minutes, not the finishing. His hip made the final physical work impossible, and he knew it and stepped back from it without the wounded pride that a less experienced animal might have brought to that moment. But everything before the finish, the positioning, the pressure, the read of the cow's movement and the pack's movement and the interaction between the two, all of that was his. All of that was what. When it was over, he stood at the edge of the kill site and breathed. Rook was already there. He looked at Duke across the carcass with an expression the research team. In wolfpack feeding dynamics, the alpha pair eat first. This was not a rule that required enforcement. It was a behavioral pattern so deeply encoded in the social architecture of pack life that violations were rare and, when they occurred, immediately resolved. The alpha pair ate first. Everyone else waited until they were invited to approach. Rook stood at the carcass. He was breathing hard from the final pursuit, his chest heaving, steam rising. He had run the left flank for 22 minutes at the kind of sustained intensity that a 4-year-old wolf in his prime could maintain, and a 9-year-old wolf with a bad hip could not. He had done the physical work that Duke hadn't been able to do. The kill was his, in the language of wolf social hierarchy, as completely as anything could be. He looked at Duke. Duke held his position at the kill. His posture was neutral. not submissive, not challenging. He had learned this posture over the past 3 months of watching from ridges and approaching kills after the others had fed. He wore it with the particular dignity of an animal that understood the terms of its current situation and was not going to pretend otherwise. Rook stepped aside. Not all the way. Not in a gesture of formal deference. That wasn't what this was. But he moved enough to create space, and his body language in creating it communicated something specific. This space is for you. Not first, not alpha, but not last, either. Duke moved to the carcass. He ate without ceremony, without the elaborate dominance marking that a formal alpha feeding sometimes involved. He ate with the focused, efficient attention of a very hungry animal who had just run farther than he had run in 8 months. He ate and the pack fed around him, Cassidy moving in on the other side, the younger adults working the periphery in the order that the pack's internal hierarchy established without anyone needing to enforce it. The Lamar Valley was quiet except for the sounds of a pack eating. The 1,000 elk continued their migration south, the herd closing over the gap left by the ravens arrived. They always arrived, materializing from nowhere with the incongruous cheerfulness of birds at a feast. A coyote appeared at the kill site's edge, assessed the situation with the rapid cost-benefit analysis that Yellowstone coyotes had been running next to wolf kills for 30 years. The senior researcher watching from the valley's edge had her camera running and her audio recorder going and her field notebook open, and she was writing fast. She had watched Duke for 7 years. She had never seen him look like this. Not young. She wasn't going to say young. She was a scientist, and young was not what she was observing. But present, alert in a way that his ridge-watching moving through the world in the full-dimensional way of an animal that was engaged with it, reading it, making decisions in it, rather than watching it from a distance. She wrote, "Subject participated in hunt. Contribution to kill significant. Positional read on target animal initiated pack adjustment approximately 40 seconds before visible vulnerability. Hip compensation evident throughout, but did not limit effectiveness in strategic role." She paused. Then she wrote one more line, which she was pretty sure she would edit out before the annual report, but which she needed to write right now, in this cold valley, with the ravens calling and the pack settling into the post-kill rest that always looked like pure satisfaction. He remembered who he was, but the morning wasn't finished.
If you're still in this valley with them, you already know why this story matters. Hit like Prife. It's how stories like Duke's reach the people who need them.
Wolf packs rarely made 2 kills in a single morning. The energy cost of a full hunt, the reading, the positioning, the extended pursuit, the final physical engagement, was significant enough that after a successful kill, most packs rested, fed, and let the day run before considering another run. The arithmetic was straightforward. Hunting cost more than it paid if you hunted when you didn't need to. But the Lamar Valley that morning was not a normal morning, and the migration moving through it was not a normal migration. The elk were everywhere. And among a herd of that size, moving through country, the pack knew cold, vulnerable animals were not rare. They were present in numbers that a pack hunting at full capacity could exploit in ways that would pay dividends for days. Rook read this. The pack had been resting for 40 minutes, the post-kill metabolism doing its work, when Rook moved to the valley's edge and looked south. The migration was still flowing. Fresh animals, animals that hadn't been pressured, animals that didn't yet carry the scent signature of a pack on the hunt. He looked back at the pack. The younger adults were up immediately. 4-year-olds ran on a different fuel tank than 9-year-olds, and 40 minutes of rest after a 22-minute hunt had them close to ready. Cassidy rose and moved to Rook's right. The standard formation reassembled itself with the fluid ease of a group that had done this 1,000 times. Duke watched from where he had been lying. He was tired. There was no pretending otherwise. His hip was a sustained low-level complaint that he was managing with the practiced stoicism of a wolf that had been managing it for a year. He had spent more in the last hour than in any single morning since the previous spring, Rook looked at him. There was a pause. A brief, charged pause of the kind that forms when two animals are negotiating something that has no clean precedent. Rook did not extend the explicit opening he had made before. But he held Duke's gaze for a moment longer than he needed to, and then he turned south and began to run. It was not an invitation. It was not an exclusion. It was, in the language of a wolf pack that had been together long enough to develop its own particular grammar, something like, "The door is there if you want it." Duke got up. He moved more slowly this time, and he knew it, and he arranged his approach accordingly. He did not try to reach the flank position. His body was telling him clearly that the full hunt pace wasn't available for a second run. He took a position further back in the formation, a trailing position that he had never occupied in 8 years of leading this pack from the front. It was a different kind of useful. From behind, with the full hunt spread out in front of him, he could read the geometry of what the pack was doing the way a quarterback reads a field, not executing the play, but seeing the whole of it in a way that was only possible from the position that wasn't in the middle of it. He watched the herd, watched the pack's movement through it, watched for the small signals of adjustment that the situation might require. When a bull on the left flank made a sudden angle change that threatened to scatter the segment of cows the pack was pressuring, Duke let out a short, low bark. Not loud, not insistent. A direction, an alert. Cassidy heard it and shifted her angle by 10 degrees. The cows stayed pressured. Nobody had asked Duke to do this. Nobody had assigned him this role. It emerged from the situation the way the most useful things emerge, because the situation required it and the animal with the capacity was present. The second hunt took 31 minutes and produced a large bull whose left shoulder had been carrying an old injury since summer. Duke had seen it from his position in the trailing rank, had read the subtle unevenness in the bull's stride that the pack's forward animals couldn't see from their angles, and had called it with the same short directional bark, twice, spaced 10 seconds apart, that shifted the pack's attention to the right target. He did not participate in the kill itself. He stood 40 yards back and watched the pack work the bull down with the sustained, methodical pressure that made wolf hunting one of the most effective predatory strategies in the natural world. He watched Rook hit the final engagement with the speed and commitment of a 4-year-old alpha at the top of his game. He watched Cassidy and 2 of the younger adults manage the rear pursuit. He watched the pack do what he had spent 8 years teaching them to do. And for the first time in 3 months, watching did not feel like loss. It felt like something else entirely. Something he didn't have a name for and didn't need one. They fed through the morning and into the early afternoon. 2 kills in one day was an event. The pack knew it in the way animals know when something has exceeded the ordinary, in the elevated quality of attention they paid to everything, in the extra energy in the post-kill social interactions, in the way the pups from this year's litter played with a looseness that they didn't show on ordinary days. Duke ate well at both kills. Not first, not most, but well. An amount that would rebuild some of what the morning had cost him, that would make tomorrow's stiffness manageable rather than severe. By 2 in the afternoon, with the low November sun already angling toward the Absaroka Range to the east, the pack had settled into the extended rest of a genuinely full day. Animals lay in loose clusters on the snow, some sleeping deeply, some watching the valley with the half-alert gaze of wolves that had no immediate concerns. The ravens had come and gone and come back. A pair of golden eagles were working the migration's southern edge, taking advantage of the disruption that 1,000 moving elk created in the smaller animals that shared the valley. Duke climbed the ridge. Not quickly. His hip had made its accounting for the day and the terms were strict. He went up carefully, 1 step at a time, choosing the line with the patience of an animal that had learned that patience was not giving up. It was just moving at the speed the situation permitted. He reached his ridge in twice the time it would have taken him 3 years ago and stood in the late afternoon light and looked out over the valley. What he saw from up there was something he had seen 1,000 times and had never quite seen before. The Lamar Valley spread below him in the particular low gold of a Wyoming winter afternoon, the snow warm-colored now instead of the blue-white of morning. The elk migration was still visible, a dark river of moving animals threading south through the pale valley, thousands of animals following the ancient, instinct-driven urgency of survival. The Druid Peak Pack was visible too, their resting forms scattered across the snow near the 2 kill sites, ravens and coyotes working the margins. His pack. He had led them for 8 years. He had made the decisions that kept them fed through 2 severe winters. He had navigated 3 major territorial challenges without losing a packmate. He had raised 43 pups to their first winter, had stood over litters in the den and watched the specific, irreversible miracle of new wolves entering the world in this valley. He could not do those things anymore, not in the way he had done them. The hip was one piece of it and time was the rest. Rook was the alpha now, and Rook would be a good alpha. Duke could see it in the morning's hunt, in the way Rook managed the pack's formation and read the herd and made the quick, committed decisions that the moment required. The pack was in good hands. That was not a small thing to know. In the life of a wolf, in the arithmetic of pack survival in the Yellowstone ecosystem, it was actually a very large thing. The largest thing, arguably, that an aging alpha could leave behind. He had done his job. All of it. He would hunt again, probably. Not like today, not the full hunt at full pace, but the trailing roll, the reed, the short bark that moved a flank animal 3 degrees and saved the pack 40 seconds of repositioning. He had learned today that he could still do that, and that it mattered. He would watch from ridges, too. That was not going to stop being part of his life. But today had shown him what watching from ridges did not show him. That the valley was not just something to observe. That it still had a use for him. Still had moments in it that required what he specifically was. That 9 years old in Yellowstone was ancient, and also not finished. Not finished. He stood on the ridge until the light went, and the valley turned from gold to gray to the deep blue of an early winter dark, and the elk moved south, and the pack slept, and the stars came out one by one over the Absarokas. And then the old wolf did what he had always done at the end of a long day in this valley. He howled. He sent it out across the Lamar Valley the way he had sent it out 1,000 other nights, chest open, muzzle raised, the full voice of a large male wolf carrying everything he had into the cold Wyoming air. It was not the voice it used to be. Time had done to it what time does to everything. Thinned the upper register slightly, taken a fraction of the raw power off the peak. But it was still, unmistakably, his. The specific acoustic signature that the Yellowstone Wolf Project's audio records had been logging for 7 years, under the file designation 1147 mm. The sound that field researchers had described in their notes with words like commanding and resonant and, once from a researcher who was usually more careful with her language, simply beautiful. The valley received it. For 3 seconds, nothing answered. Then Rook's voice came up from the valley floor, the alpha's response lower and fuller than Duke's, carrying the particular authority of an animal that was exactly where it was supposed to be in the structure of its world. Then Cassidy, from the east edge of the kill site. Then 2 of the younger adults, their voices still carrying the higher frequencies of wolves not yet settled into their full adult register. Then the rest, one by one, the whole pack adding their voices until the Lamar Valley was full of the Druid Peak Pack, singing together into the November dark. The chorus lasted 2.5 minutes. Down in the valley, below the ridge, in the research vehicle parked at the standard observation point, the senior researcher had her audio recorder running and her hands flat on the dashboard, and she was not writing anything in the field notebook. She was just listening. She had been listening to Duke howl for 7 years. She knew his voice the way you knew the voice of someone you had spent a long time paying close attention to. What she heard tonight was different from the ridge howls of the past 3 months, the searching, slightly hollow calls of an animal whose position in its own world had shifted and who was still working out what that meant. What she heard tonight was the other thing. The thing Duke's voice had carried in his prime, through 8 winters of leading this pack across one of the most demanding wolf territories in the American West. She wrote it down afterward because she was a scientist, and eventually everything had to be written down. She wrote, "Evening vocalization from 11:47 m, duration 2.5 minutes. Full pack response. Vocalization quality notably different from recent observations, increased resonance, longer duration, full frequency range utilized." Then she wrote the next line, which was not in the standard field note format and which she kept in her personal record, rather than the official log. "He sounds like himself again." The night settled over the Lamar Valley. The elk continued south. The pack came in from the cold one by one and found their positions in the resting cluster. The accumulated warmth of 11 wolves pulling the temperature of that small patch of snow a meaningful number of degrees above the ambient. Duke came down off the ridge and moved into the cluster. He settled on the eastern edge, not the center, not the alpha's position, but not the periphery either. A place that was his, that the pack had left for him without being asked, in the way that packs maintained the spaces of their members even when everything else shifted. He lay down. His hip found its least objectionable configuration. His nose cataloged the smell of the pack around him, individual and collective, the specific chemistry of 11 animals he had known in some cases since birth, the accumulated scent history of years of shared life in this valley. The stars were very bright over the Absarokas. Tomorrow there would be more elk in the valley. Tomorrow Rook would read the morning and call the formation and lead the run. Tomorrow the pack would hunt and feed and do the 1,000 small things that kept a wolf family alive in Yellowstone in November. Duke would be there for all of it, not leading, not watching from ridges. There, which was, in the end, exactly enough. He didn't go back out there to prove something. He went back out there because 1,000 elk were moving through his valley, and some things, no matter how old you get, still ask everything you have left. And you go.